Monday morning. It's July 20th. You found the weather desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller, and I'm here to talk to you about today's top weather headlines. A lot going on over the weekend, some good things, some not so good things, and some interesting things to talk to you about in terms of the tropics and tropical development. We're going to begin with our headlines, and I've got an update for you on the Canadian wildfire smoke. Hampton Roads, we were suffering with so much of the northeastern U.S. and the north central part of the country. We had all that smoke. Things have improved across our area. But is it gone? Is it going to come back? How close is it to our area? We'll get into all of that. We also have an update on some flooding over the weekend in the northeast U.S. In addition, I've got the severe weather outlook, and we do have weather impact alerts for our area, Hampton Roads, as there is the potential for severe storms. Slight risk today down to the south, marginal across Hampton Roads, but the chances increase a little bit for Tuesday and Wednesday. That's when we have weather impact alerts, and we'll talk about that, show you what other parts of the country could see some tornadoes or other severe weather hazards. We also have a live discussion and interview coming up on potential dangerous algal blooms in the Chesapeake Bay and around our local waters, so we'll spend some time talking about that coming up as well. It's going to be a good and I think interesting conversation. In addition, in the tropics, we have TD number 2. If you remember, TD number 1 turned into Arthur. That was early in the season down in the western Gulf. Now we have TD 2 in the northeastern Gulf. I'll show you where it's headed and what we expect to develop with that over the coming days. I also have the work week forecast. I should also mention over in the Pacific, we have Fausto. That system developed as well. There's one that may be a little interesting off the west U.S. coast. If you've an interest out in the western U.S., stay tuned. More on all of this coming up. We're going to start off, though, by taking a look at the air quality. And again, you can see the smoke early this morning off to the north. It has been creeping down and starting to increase a little bit across northern parts of Virginia Beach, Norfolk, back up in the peninsula, the middle peninsula, northern neck, and the eastern shore. It's not as dense as it was last week, but we do want to keep an eye to this smoke, and we're going to be doing it. Again, the air quality has been improving across Hampton Roads. We may see it tick up a little bit, the smoke, but it is much worse in other parts of the country. Right now, our air quality is moderate. If we look off to the north, back around the Great Lakes region, they still have code red for poor air quality. And I'll tell you what, that smoke from the Canadian wildfires, it has been blanketing several states. This is a look at the conditions in New York on Friday, where there were concerns smoke would impact the World Cup final on Sunday, but rain helped clear most of it out just in time. President Donald Trump attended the game, as well as Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Afterward, President Trump suggested Canada pay damages to the U.S. due to days of poor air quality, something Ontario officials are pushing back on.
I told them, you got to stop these fires from coming in and, poisoning our air. Our air has been poisoned. I have a good relationship with Mark Carney, but, we got to stop the fires up there. If we can help them, we'll help them. But maybe they should pay us some damages or something, or we should do some tariffs. But it was terrible. You had businesses closing. In particular, Michigan. If you look at Detroit, Michigan area, they had to close everything. They had to close car plants and a lot of other things. So I've never remembered this happening. Over the last 4 or 5 years, you saw it starting to take place. I've never remembered it happening.
I find it a shame, the administration in the U.S. and Congress people writing these letters and blaming us and so on and so forth. They have a very short memory. We had the water bombers, everyone ready, going over to California. It was last year. We sent down hydro linemen down to the Carolinas and Georgia to help out. That's what neighbors do, right? You don't get on and start threatening and criticizing, because guess what? One day it's going to be your turn.
All right, here at home, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality Right now, Hampton Roads is under a code yellow or moderate. Parts of the area are code green, which means air quality is okay. But we do have code yellow right now in Norfolk, as I just showed you that graphic. On Friday, remember, we were under code red. Want to show you again the smoke forecast, because we are looking still at some smoke off to the north. As I mentioned, a slight increase maybe a little later, but it is forecast to lift farther to the north. That's through Tuesday, so some good news there. Let's hope that smoke stays north of our area. Now, the smoke in the northeast may be gone, but some states got slammed by strong storms over the weekend. In New York City, the National Weather Service says up to 4 inches of rain fell in some neighborhoods on Saturday. So tremendous amounts of rain there. Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens were hit the hardest. City officials warned residents living in basement apartments to move to higher floors. The weather caused flight delays and cancellations at LaGuardia and Kennedy, also at Newark. This is a look at flooding in Newark on Saturday. The floodwaters trapped several drivers in their cars, including a tow truck driver who'd been called to help them out. So you
came down here on the call. I pulled out 3 cars already. When I got to this last truck, that was when it was tough. The water got high. It started raining more. It stopped when I was pulling in there. Then it started raining more. Then it came down. Then everything just went dead on my truck.
Now, fortunately, that tow truck driver made it out unharmed. I will tell you, there are opportunities for more storms today across the country, and we're going to take a look at the severe weather outlook as we go along. But you see that heavier rain rolling through over the weekend. Now they're catching a little bit of a break, but man, that rain was coming down when it came down over the weekend. How about the severe weather outlook for the country today? You can see there's some unsettled weather up in the north central U.S. from Iowa and Minnesota into Wisconsin up towards the UP of Michigan. We've got some showers down along the Gulf Coast. More on what is TD2 coming up in a bit. West Texas still seeing some showers and some wet weather in the Pacific Northwest. Flood potential here from West Texas into southwest New Mexico into Arizona. We also have a flood risk across North Carolina. As we take a closer look, you'll notice Hampton Roads just level 1, but level 2 for most of eastern North Carolina, all the way down to Wilmington, back through Raleigh as well. And then out west again, this is the area. Remember, hill country out here was hit so hard last week. Now the flooding rains are spreading a little farther to the west, and that'll continue as we go forward. Notice we have the potential for excessive rains both tomorrow and Wednesday. As far as the severe weather outlook goes, we've got 2 areas of greatest concern, and the tornadic threats there down to our south. There might be a few stronger storms in North Carolina, but this is the area most concerned with tornadoes. Iowa to Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. Also large hail, a problem up there. For us, it's going to be primarily gusty winds. The stronger winds, again, also associated with this system, which pulls to the east, setting up our Cat 2, or level 2, I should say, threat for severe weather. Strong winds a primary concern, but there is an elevated risk for us here in Hampton Roads for tornadoes tomorrow. It's a first kind of tier of elevated threat, but it's something we're going to be watching for here at 13 News Now. Hail threat farther to the north. Finally, on Wednesday, there's also a level 2 threat. Winds the primary concern there. Well, we're going to take a short break. Coming up next, scientists are keeping an eye on a harmful algal bloom forming in the lower Chesapeake Bay. We're going to hear from an expert about how it could impact marine life. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. It's good to be with you. We're going to talk about something I think is going to be of interest to a lot of folks here in Hampton Roads. Scientists are keeping an eye on a harmful algal bloom forming in the lower Chesapeake Bay and the York River. Joining us now to talk more about the impacts this could have on the bay, Kimberly Reese, a professor at William & Mary's Virginia Institute for Marine Science and the Batten School. Well, first of all, good morning and thanks for joining us. Let's talk about these algal blooms and what exactly we're looking at here. How are you and what do we have that we're studying here?
Good morning, Craig. Thank you for having me. Yes, algae blooms are these rapid growth of these small plant-like cells in our waterways, and they're called phytoplankton. And the ones that we're seeing starting to grow now happen to be dinoflagellates. And the one that we're following right now in particular is one that has a large name called Margolophidium polycricoides, but we call it Marge. That makes it easier to say for everybody. And often at this time of year, we have seen this organism form these blooms in our lower Chesapeake Bay waterways, the rivers like the York River, the James River, Lafayette, Elizabeth, and just the general Hampton Roads area. So we have several colleagues around the area, down at ODU, Margie Mulholland and her group, and several of us here at VIMS, including the Chesapeake Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve Group. They're collecting samples, and many labs here at VIMS in addition, and the Virginia Department of Health. They have a group out collecting samples. So many of us are keeping an eye on this and collecting samples.
Dr. Reese, this is something, these blooms are kind of a natural thing. I mean, they do occur, but why is this one potentially harmful to the bay?
Yes, it can be harmful to the aquatic animals, but this organism in particular is not really known for any human health effects, so that's really important. There are some organisms that cause human health effects, but the organisms that we often see in the late summer here, Margolophidium or Marge, and Alexandrium monolatum, which often follows the Marge blooms, we call it Alex. So the organism that you're showing there, those look like cyanobacterial blooms, and those are blooms that we often see in fresh waters around the areas. But the blooms that we see in our estuarine or marine waters often are a mahogany or reddish color. And
looks a
so
little bit like spilled paint, kind of.
Right. So they're often called red tides, but they're really, harmful algal blooms that are often in mahogany color, and sometimes people see them as brownish color. And there are ways for people to report this on the Virginia Department of Health's website. At swimhealthyvirginia.gov, there's a form there for people when they see discolored water, even in the fresh waters like the pictures you were showing of those cyanobacterial blooms, or in the rivers or out in the coastal waters. They can report any discolored water that they might see using that form.
Dr. Reese, we saw kind of the stagnant water. A lot of times you'll kind of associate some of that, the blooms are just kind of that greenish kind of, it looks a little slimy if it's stagnant water. In something like the bay where there is movement, what types of conditions generally spawn this type of development? Are there certain times of the year that you really anticipate it, or are there certain conditions that tend to trigger more?
Yes. So there are different organisms that bloom at different kinds of times of the year, depending on the conditions. And right now, the temperatures happen to be elevated, and we've had drought conditions, so the salinity is a little bit higher. So we're seeing these blooms of Margolophidium or Marge start to form. Now, last week at the beginning of the week, we had some dense patches of Marge, but then we had that smoke from Canada come in, as we all know, and so the sunlight was inhibited getting into the water, as you know. So it's possible that the cells weren't able to grow quite as well toward the end of the week because we didn't have as much sunlight. So we saw some lower cell numbers in the water towards the end of the week. We saw at the beginning of the week, but we'll see what happens this week.
So
That's why we monitor it very carefully.
So to stress again, you mentioned really not a human health standpoint where there's a great risk. Obviously, you wouldn't want to ingest it. I would imagine that would probably tear up your digestive tract a little bit. But for aquatic life, when you get those types of really heavy blooms, that can choke oxygen to some of the water, and that's what makes it harder on marine life. Is that correct?
Well, it's always suggested that you never go in water when it's discolored. If you see discolored water, don't go in it. Now, for the cyanobacterial blooms, that's really important that people stay out of those waterways because many of the those green, that slime, that green, those cyanobacterial blooms, many of them are harmful to human health. There's also on the Swim Healthy Virginia Department of Health's website, a HAB hotline for people to call if they have any questions about human health. There's a number there that they can call.
Okay.
And it's really important that people stay out of any discolored water. If you have any questions, it's important to ask and to use the HAB hotline.
Okay, and that hotline number is 1-888 238.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you right now.
That's okay. I'm passing it along just because it's not on the screen right now. But the number that we have is 1-888-238-6154. So, Dr. Reese, thank you so much for your time this morning. We'll look forward to seeing what you and your colleagues have to say in the coming days. And until this bloom kind of takes place and passes, we'll be waiting to hear more, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have a great day. All right, we're going to take another quick break. Coming up after this, we're going to take a look at Tropical Depression number 2. It's formed in the northeastern Gulf. We'll let you know where it's headed and who needs to be paying extra close attention. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. Time to track the tropics, and in the Gulf we have a tropical storm warning for this little stretch of water here from right around the Big Bend region of Florida back over along the Panhandle coast offshore. Now that's offshore because again we have this tropical depression that is formed and tropical storm force conditions are possible offshore. There's a tropical storm watch for the coast again right along this stretch of the Florida Panhandle and over through Mobile Bay. This is a look at TD2, what could become Bertha a little bit later on. It is forecast to continue just kind of drifting to the northwest, basically rolling right over New Orleans and Lake Pontchartrain as a tropical storm. So not a tremendous amount of wind at this point anticipated, but it is forecast to become Tropical Storm Bertha with winds of 45 miles per hour, maximum winds at 50 by early Wednesday, and then moving farther to the west. My concern here is that eventually this tropical moisture could rain out over that Texas Hill Country, an area that was hit so hard last week. Two areas in the eastern Pacific. This one, Alida, is forecast to weaken, but you can see it could stir things up off the west coast. There's California coast. It's not expected to make a landfall, but some more moisture and a little bit of wind offshore from the west coast. And this is Fausto. Fausto formed over the weekend, and you can see Fausto is forecast to move off to the west and is not a threat to land. We'll take another quick break. Coming up, we're going to have a look at our work week forecast. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. Here's a look at the boating and the beach forecast. We'll start with the beach. You can see temperatures into the low 80s, a mix of clouds and sunshine. UV index very high. Rip current threat is low. That is good news. Know that there might be a stray shower or storm out there late afternoon. I think the better chances for storminess are actually going to be inland away from the beach, but still keep an eye to the app. Check the radar every now and then if you're heading out. Out on the water, east winds 5 to 15 knots for the bay and the ocean. Again, seas and waves running about 2 feet. That's it. Chances for rain does increase late afternoon after 3 o'clock, say 4 or 5 o'clock chances. And then again, we're going to see another chance for showers or storms developing later in the day, Tuesday and Tuesday evening, and a better chance as we get into Wednesday, some more scattered wet weather. For today, low low to mid 80s, that chance for storms this afternoon, and there is that severe weather chance. Remember, we do have a weather impact alert for tomorrow afternoon and Wednesday afternoon. Look at these feels like temperatures tomorrow. It's going to feel like it's up around 102, so more heat and humidity. A little bit of wet weather this morning down to the south. That stuff's going to wind down, but as we go later in the afternoon, you see the chances for storms. That's one of our models. Here's another one. Again, some of those storms popping up later this afternoon and tonight. We'll be keeping an eye to all of this for you. More unsettled weather coming up Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday afternoon, scattered most likely on Wednesday, and then cooler as we finish up the week. Still, though, some chances for hit or miss storms. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Weather Desk. We'll see you next time.